Welcome to another episode of the Grove Podcast. Today we have Aaron Peters, all the way in from Boston, Massachusetts.
That's right, yes.
Aaron, man, it's awesome having you here.
Thank you, man. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm so proud of you and everything you're doing and all that stuff. Man, let's jump right in, man. Tell me about you guys. What's going on with you?
Yep. So we've been in Boston now for a little over 2 years.
Okay.
We just planted our church 18 weeks ago.
18 weeks.
Yep, 18 weeks ago. We planted in the neighborhood of Brighton. About 50,000 people. It's right next to Boston College, Boston University. And we meet in a local high school. And we've got right about 90 people was our last Sunday.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
man.
Now, tell me about Emily. How Emily's your wife?
Yep.
How is she transitioning to living in Boston?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys been there a couple of years though, right?
Yep. 2.5 years we've been there.
Okay.
And Emily and I actually met at Hickory Grove.
Right.
So her family is part of the North Campus, and I was an intern.
Hey, bro, it's Mallard Creek campus.
Ooh, that's right.
You've been going long
I'm
enough.
gone. Mallard Creek campus,
There you
and
go,
I was
there you
at the Harris Boulevard campus.
No, just Harris. Harris Boulevard.
Can't get it right. Harris campus.
That's it.
I was there, and we met 2011. It was the summer camp we did at Camp Paradise. And I thought she was a beautiful girl, super sweet, very godly. And we started to date that next year. And then we got married in 2013.
Okay.
And then really felt called that God was calling us to go back to Boston, which we'll get to later, of even how God called us there. And we've been living there for 2.5 years, moved in 2017, and have loved it.
Yeah. So now, what were you doing in Boston when you first went there? Okay, so you moved to Boston, but you weren't really. I mean, your church hadn't started yet. So what were you doing in that meantime?
Yes. So for us, even to plant a church, there was a lot of groundwork to figure out, like, where in all of the Boston area do we plant a church? It's got 23 neighborhoods, 5.8 million people. God, where are you calling us to even plant? And so part of the 2 years was we were at a church that was a church plant as well. In the SBC NAM church plant. They've been there for 10 years, and so I did a residency with them first.
Okay.
They trained me. We had a lot of conversations about where to plant, and we lived in the neighborhood of Brighton, which was not our target area at first.
Okay.
We were actually looking at planting right south of Boston in the neighborhood of Quincy. But we were like, man, we can't wait to plant in order to share the gospel. Like, we need to share the gospel now with our neighbors and friends. We began to do that, and people started coming to our home for small groups. The neighborhood began to ask us to help serve in a couple things. And then they were asking, like, hey, you're talking about starting a church. Like, are you doing that in our neighborhood or another neighborhood? And I was like, man, why not here if God's opening up so many doors? And so we changed because we feel like the Spirit was leading us to plant right there in Brighton.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, we'll get to that a little bit later. Before we go to that, I want us to let's talk about your kind of past a little bit. Let's talk some history with Aaron Peters. Just because if someone's new to Hickory Grove or whatever, they may not know who you are, may not have experience with you. You used to be on staff here, well, at the Harris at the Harris campus.
Harris campus.
So walk us through some of that. Give us let's go back even further. Let's go. Where are you from?
Yes.
Like, where you grew up? Kind of what are some things you did? That.
I was born right outside of Raleigh in Cary, North Carolina, and lived there until I think about 5th grade or so. Then we moved to Roanoke, Virginia, and then we moved back to Greensboro, and then graduated high school in Greensboro, and then I went to UNC Charlotte for college.
Wait, I thought you were from Asheville.
Nope, Mom and Dad live there now, but I never lived there.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So I wasn't a Christian until college. Mom and Dad are first-generation Christians in the whole Peters family.
Okay.
So I grew up sort of in and out of church, but I didn't really grasp what the gospel was until college. And I was at UNC Charlotte, and my roommate at the time invited me to come to Hickory Grove.
Okay.
And I began to get involved in Hickory Grove, and I really wrestled with my faith from 16 to 20. And then finally at 20 years old, God saved my soul, and I became a Christian, and then got connected with the church, went to seminary. The church was gracious to bring me on as an intern when I knew nothing about anything. And the staff developed me. Pastor Clint poured a lot of time and effort into me, as well as Mike Powers. Did an internship, and then I brought on to do middle school ministry, and then was a student pastor for about a year. So I was with Hickory Grove for, I think, right over 6 years.
Now, there was one point in time, I think you were pursuing like a musical career, right? I can't let you get out of Charlotte without everyone hearing the story. So I need to know what on earth is this about? I need to know the name. Not just me. Everyone needs to know the name of this band or whatever you guys were doing.
Yep.
Spill the beans.
Yep. I was a huge punk rock fan growing up. And so my buddies in college and we put a band together called Purple Backpacks, Yellow Hacky Sacks. And that was our punk rock band.
That was your whole name? That was the name?
That's the whole name, bro.
Purple Backpacks, Yellow Hacky Sacks.
That was the whole band name. Our drummer at the time, he was trying to convey like a rhythm to us, and that's the rhythm. He's like, it needs to be like Purple Backpacks, Yellow Hacky Sacks, and we're like, that's the band name. That's it. Terrible band name. We went nowhere. I think,
nice.
like one whole dorm heard of us.
Yeah, right. Is there like any sort of recording or anything?
We burned all those down. We took them all offline and everything. So there's a song floating around with some of our students from old, and so you can check maybe with them. So.
Now did you play any instruments or what?
I did. I was a lead singer of that band and played rhythm guitar.
Okay, so like how did your voice sound like? Me being I'm not a punk rock genre kind of guy.
Yeah.
So can you give me like an example kind of what maybe one like chorus of a song or something?
Man,
you weren't expecting this. You thought we were gonna be all spiritual and just do Boston stuff, but I got you here.
It was more of a kind of a whining cat, baby screaming sort of voice.
Okay, so it wasn't like a like that kind of stuff,
No.
More of a.
Whatever you're thinking of is it.
There was a band a long time ago called Hoobastank or something like that.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that band?
They're a lot better than we were.
Yeah, okay. Or like there was another band called like All American Rejects or
That's
something
about
like
it.
that.
Yes. That's about it.
I mean, the names are excellent.
The names are spot on.
I mean, it just flows. Purple.
Yep. Purple Backpack, Yellow Hacky Sacks. Yeah, we were band together for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's right around that time when I became a Christian. So our music definitely took a turn.
Maybe we should, let Jacob and Ben and Blake know about you.
There's
Maybe
no doubt.
You guys can come back and do a little something to do now or something.
There's no doubt.
A little late night at Camp Paradise.
We can do it, man. We can do it. We did at Camp Paradise. We did host one song by them. It was called "Melt Your Face." That was about a 5-minute sequence that we did at Camp Paradise, and then I went to Boston from there.
Oh, kind of like a drop the mic and roll.
Drop and run.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's get away from this.
Yeah,
Let's get back to
Would
Boston.
love to. Yes.
So, give me a little bit more. Tell me what you're doing currently.
Yeah.
In Boston.
Yes. We planted a church 18 weeks ago. In our neighborhood, again, it's only 3% evangelical. So only 3% of our community believes the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus and their faith alone in him that makes them a Christian. 3% of our neighborhood, which is 50,000 people. Right now, this is not a bragging. It just kind of shows where we're at as a church. If we reach the 100 mark of people on Sunday morning, we'll be the largest church in our neighborhood.
Wow.
Just shows the amount of there's not really a huge presence of Christianity or any of that. So our main goal when we moved to Boston was, we want to be invested in a neighborhood. And so what we have is our church, we call them community groups. And so each of our 9 community groups are connected with a pocket of people in the neighborhood that they can serve, share the gospel with, and give their time and money to. And so we're connected with local high schools, the YMCA, with low-income housing authorities. And so our 9 community groups are all connected to them, and they're out weekly with them. And so they're not just sharing meals or Bible study time with people in our church. They're connected with people in our community. Mm-hmm. And so they're giving their own money, not just the church's money, but they're giving their money to help meet needs and serve teachers at schools. And that was our heartbeat. And we prayed, God, we'd love to have a Sunday morning gathering, but the church, of course, is much more than a Sunday morning gathering. The church is called to come together, but then to be sent out. And so our church from the very beginning was very adamant about that. So we technically planted the moment we land on the ground in Boston, but the Sunday morning gathering didn't start until 2.5 years later when we had about 40 people, enough for us to get started to have a kids ministry. And then now, by God's grace, we're at 90. And the majority of our churches, there's non-believers coming and gathering. There's probably about 30, 40 believers, and then the rest are really exploring their faith and asking questions and reading the Bible for some of them for the very first time.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what is it like
cold?
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why the beard is so nice.
It's
and
a
thick.
scarf from a whole body, man.
It just kind of blocks everything.
It's a blanket from a wife.
It's really nice.
Thank
Actually,
you.
it smells nice too.
It does. I put some beard oil.
Beard oil in there.
You've got to keep it tame or
what kind of beard oil do you use?
I forgot the name of it. It's in a little. I got it from the barbers at 52, 59,
54.
54. I know it's getting close.
Nice.
Those guys got it for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, I don't do beards or anything like that.
Yeah, your hair looks great, man. Just the way you are.
Anyway, so back to Boston.
Yeah.
So being in the North, so I've lived in the South my whole life, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
I don't know like what typically what kind of churches are up that way, or even what people think or feel. Typically, if I go to a restaurant or if I go out someplace and I run into someone, if I meet somebody, typically they've heard of Jesus, they've heard of church, they've had some sort of church history. Living in the South is like kind of everyone does. It's getting to the point where not really everyone is like that now, but for a long time it's been that way.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? What is it like in Boston?
Yeah. There's sort of two categories of people that are in Boston. The top category is a real transient population where 30% of Boston moves in and out every year, and they're really
30%?
high. 30% is massive.
Whoa.
So these are the high.
Is that like students or?
Yeah, students, grad students, or young professionals that moved in. They're just got a job right out of college, and so that's a really secular mindset. These kids are going to Harvard and MIT and like really high academic schools, and so their thought of Christianity is we're really outdated. The Bible's not something you can trust. I can't rely on any of that to be accurate. This Jesus guy, it probably just led people astray religiously, and we need to take a different approach with science and kind of art in order to make our lives better or find hope and meaning. And so that's the top sort of 30% of our city is just they're willing to have conversations about it, but there's no buy-in to any of it. There's another category that's makes up about 45% of our city has a really works-based faith, and so they think by maybe their grandma went to church, and that will kind of translate to them, and they have a right standing with God, they think, because of their morality, reading the Bible, taking communion, going to church, talking to a pastor, something like that. And there's a large percentage of people that have different sort of sets of beliefs.
Wow. Okay, so now how does Emily play a part in a lot of that with you?
Yeah.
With just sharing the gospel or just meeting with people, how does that work?
Yeah, so we live in an apartment complex of about 70 people, and so monthly we gather the whole apartment complex together and host a meal.
Man,
and so there could be 40, 50 people together, stuffed in our
Good
apartment or on the
night.
back deck.
Yeah.
Or we're connected with the YMCA. And so Emily's role for our church, she's sort of like all of the logistics and details of our church she helps hold together. She's in charge of our community partnerships, and so that with the local school, the housing authorities, the YMCA, the colleges that are nearby, she helps us connect with them, sets up meetings and says, hey, what are your needs? And we kind of have a way to fill out those needs as a church and then actually go and meet those needs. And so she's right there, not just alongside of me, but she's sometimes even leading the charge with, Aaron, I'm going to go reach these people today, and we're going to bring our little daughter with us. And she goes and she's having the same conversations that I am. And so she's not just necessarily just doing things at home administratively, but she's out in the front line sharing the gospel.
That's incredible. Now you mentioned your daughter. Let's talk about that. Just the whole story.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about it with me earlier.
Yeah.
Man, share.
Yeah.
I want to know. People want to know. Tell me what's going on with the family.
Yes. So before we moved to Boston, we felt God was pressing in our hearts to pursue foster care and adoption. And so that was something that's been a part of my own family's history. As I was growing up, my mom and dad would have teenagers come and stay with us, and we would help them sort of get back onto their feet, or if they were pregnant at 15, and my mom and dad would sort of help coach them to be a mom or a dad and get a job and sort of get back on their feet. So foster care was always kind of in my family, watching that as a child. Yeah. And then Emily's oldest sister was adopted. And so that was always in our hearts, and we started to date and explore that conversation together. We got married, and we're like, we just are curious about the timing, God. When should we start this? So we felt like we needed to begin to submit paperwork when we got to Boston. So August of 2017, we moved. We turned in our paperwork, and then we met a little girl, and her name's Kiana. And we met her because another church planting family that was a part of the North American Mission Board that planted somewhere else provided respite care for her and said, hey, there's this little girl that's been through a lot in her life, and she's in foster care, but she needs a home. Would you guys like to meet her and pray and explore this possibility? So we met a little girl named Kiana at 13 years old. And then we began to slowly build a relationship with her. 13 months old.
I was like...
Sorry, no Back to the Future
sequence
here. Sorry,
no time travel. I don't know what just happened
there. 13 months old.
Yep.
We met her. We began to just do slow care with her in terms of meeting her at her foster house, and then she would come to ours, and then we'd move it into weekends and then week-long. And now she just turned 3 in October. And we submitted all of our paperwork for adoption. And so we'll hear a date within the next couple of weeks about when that could be. And then legally, she'll be our daughter.
Oh, that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the pictures I see, it's got the little smiley face over her face.
That's right.
Whatever,
That's right. We can't wait to reveal it to the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because she's beautiful, man.
Thank you so much,
and this is great. So, anything else?
Yeah, I can share that with you.
Yeah.
Part of our heart is our church is taking a real initiative in foster care and adoption. Massachusetts, on some regard, does a really good job with it, but there's a massive need. So in Massachusetts alone, there's 9,000 kids that are in foster care. 6,000 of the 9,000 are just in Boston.
Wow.
And so not to throw a bunch of stats, but to kind of frame what those numbers mean, for every 1 square mile, there's 125 kids just sitting there. Wanting to be reunited with their family again, or they're going to move towards adoption.
Goodness.
So even right now, as we sit in Charlotte, there's about 1,000 kids that are in Boston that are needing homes. But even just the high cost of living that's there, and the apartments are smaller and places to live, there's less space. These kids just sit in foster care, and about 90% of kids that sit all the way through foster care either end up in jail or dead. And so part of our church said, hey, we want to make this stop happening. We want no more orphans in our city. Yeah. So although we're a small church of 90 people, a lot of our folks are already getting licensed to be foster care and adoptive families. The families that moved up from Hickory Grove are pursuing that as well.
That's great.
And so they've even been a great network for us. And so we're even taking a leap of faith, and in pursuing another little girl right now who has just turned 1 year old. And so we're pursuing foster care with her. She's not in her home yet, but we'll see how God pans that out for us.
That's great, man. It's neat how the DNA of a lot of the pastors that's here with foster care and adoption and stuff. You know, with you being one of our pastors, going up there and kind of taking that up there, and man, it's just neat. It's just neat to see you guys doing that and making that kind of a significant portion of your church and your leaders.
Absolutely, thanks, man.
So any sort of update you can give us on some of the families that went up there? You mentioned them about some of the foster care and adoptive stuff, but just give me a quick update on a couple of them.
Yeah, so Hickory Grove sent with our family. There was 4 other families who joined us. There was the Pav family, the Wrights family, the Daniels, and the Jacobs came and joined us.
Just with the Pavs, I mean, y'all doubled like attendance pretty quick. I mean,
there's no doubt they have 4 kids.
Yeah,
and all of these families are wonderful for us. They're not just coming up and helping us set up for an event, like getting pipe and drape together, which is important. But these families are actually the community group leaders of our family, and so they're leading out in mission and shepherding for our church. So all of our families, other families helped join us when we were there, but they're the backbone of our church. If we didn't have these families that Hickory Grove sent out, we wouldn't have a church. I couldn't maintain the shepherding or the mission of 90 people in our church alone. And they're doing a tremendous job. The Wrights have a little boy now that they gave birth to in Boston. His name is Hudson. And even them, they're even using Hudson. And our neighborhood doesn't have a ton of kids in there. Out of 5,000 people or 50,000 people, there might be 1,500 kids. Wow. And so if you have a kid, all of that community sort of spends time together. And so even Haley and Bradley Wright are spending time with Hudson in the community and meeting other families, as well as the Pavs with all of their 4 kids, and they're doing a tremendous job. And again, we wouldn't be a church without them.
Okay, so walk us through a Sunday morning experience with you guys.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why I ask is because maybe some people aren't aware of everything that goes into making Sunday morning happen for you guys. Here at Hickory Grove, you walk into a massive building. We have a lot of land, a lot of property. There's tons of parking, all that kind of stuff. What does it look like for you guys in Boston?
Yeah. So at first we were trying to figure out, man, where do we meet? We need a spot to where our non-Christian friends and neighbors would feel comfortable to come, but not so much that would break the bank. And so we really explored maybe we should just meet at like my apartment. But people in the neighborhood kind of saw that as cultish, and it was actually going to be a barrier to the gospel for us.
Oh, wow.
So we're like, okay, we're not going to do this.
Yeah.
So we looked at different places. We looked at a dance studio. We looked at the YMCA. And we're actually praying in the parking lot at a local high school and saying, God, please, would you open up a door here? This is the central part of our neighborhood. Everyone knows what this is. It's right off a bus stop in the subway. God, would you allow us to meet here? We get out of the parking lot, and we meet the headmaster right outside the parking lot. It's like, hey, would you guys like to come in? Are you guys coming to tour our school? And we were like, yeah, we are. We'd love to connect. And it's like, yeah, would you guys like to meet here as a church, as we were explaining that? And they invited us to come meet at their church. And so she was the interim headmaster at the time. She was a Christian. She'd only been in position for just a few weeks.
Wow.
And we believe that God had that station for us because in Boston, they kick out churches all the time. There's not a lot of churches in Boston in general that are preaching the gospel, but a lot that do, they get booted from the schools pretty quick. And so she's been a real big advocate for us. And so we meet in a local high school, Brighton High School. It's the very center of our in our neighborhood, and we meet in their auditorium.
Okay.
And so what it looks like for us, man, church service starts at 10 a.m., but we got to get there at 7:30 to set up everything as a church.
Yeah.
And so we set up the chairs, pipe and drape, the screens, the soundboards, the kids ministry area. We're getting out each toy. We're wiping down each toy. We're getting our greeters ready. People are still trying to locate our church, right? So we're getting all of our signs up that are out in the parking lot. And it's just all of our people. And so they're on a rotation. Dan Jacobs, which is a part of Hickory Grove, him and his wife Kelly sacrificed their life with the others to come up to Boston. And so Dan's over the kind of greeter and hospitality, and Kelly's over the kids ministry. Bradley's been a big help for us. Bradley Wright, who came up, he runs all the tech ministry things. Yeah, he's over all of that. And then we've got Matt and Jordan who help out with Sunday morning scheduling and then set up and tear down. And so they're helping us run the whole operation Sunday morning. We've got a worship director now that he's come from Connecticut, which is really helpful when we have a guy that's from New England and not just a white guy from the South like me trying to do ministry in a very diverse city. And so what it looks like for us as a church, we get started right around 10:05. We give kind of our millennial generation a little bit of a couple minutes to get in there. And so we have we do one song at the very beginning. And then I actually do announcements at that time. And a part of our church at that time, we're very new, so we're explaining who we are and what are our values as a church. So say, hey, our values are gospel, community, and mission. So at the very beginning, we explain what those three things mean. We have a prayer of the church, and that could be we're praying for someone in our church, we're praying for something in the community, or something in the world.
You know, that's cool that you do that every Sunday. I mean, if you don't say it enough,
yes.
Like when you're sick and tired of saying it, it's like people are just starting to get it.
I think that we found that to be very true.
That's great. I just totally interrupted you.
No. I think it's great, man. I think that's vital for even our guests to say, man, thank you for sharing what you're about from the very beginning, I don't feel like I'm finding that out later. That you guys are very clear on what the gospel means, and you're very clear about what you teach from the Bible, and you're very clear on mission means we're going to share the love and truth in Jesus with the world, and we're going to start first here in Brighton, and they're very, very open to all of that.
Yeah.
So we do that. We do a prayer of the church, and then we do 2 more songs, and then I come and preach, which is a blast. We've been in our church is very young, and so some of our folks didn't know there was an Old Testament and a New Testament, or even that the Old Testament had to do with Jesus. Right? We, sometimes for us, we look in, we're like, what are these priests or these laws or these commands have to do with Jesus? Well, they all point towards Jesus, right? And our church is unpacking that for the first time. They're like, Pastor, or they're like, Aaron, I can't believe that all of that pointed to a Jesus would be the sacrifice that we're reading, or he would fulfill the law. And you could watch it's connecting in a new way, and it's super exciting for us. So also every Sunday, we take communion together. And the reason why we do that is Paul doesn't give limits. We can do it as often as every week, or we can do it once a month together. There's no right or wrong to do that. But for our church, it's easy to do that with only 90 people, right?
Sure.
It's easy for us to do that. And what it does is it reminds people to celebrate the goodness and gospel of Jesus.
That's strong.
And then it even helps our non-believers really have a clear moment to say, you know what, I don't believe this yet, but I want to partake in this because it seems really meaningful about the blood of Jesus. He's died for us, and the bread that's been broken for us so we could be made whole in him. I'm really interested in that. And some of even our friends who have a works-based faith think that sometimes communion saves them, and so at that point we can say, hey guys, communion or baptism or any things, these don't save you from our sin, but they're a reminder of the goodness of Jesus. They're a symbol, they're a meaningful symbol. So then we have a closing song. We do giving as a church, and then we close down. So it's right about 90 minutes is our church service, and then our entire church tears down. So the same people that got there that morning tear down the church in the afternoon, and then all of our key leaders from our church are taking out guests to lunch. They're inviting them over to their house either that night to come and just sit by the fire or hang out, watch a movie together. And that's how our church is being built. It's just a lot of relational time with each other.
That's great. Now, when we were someplace, I can't remember where we were, but someone was introducing you, and they said about you that you're probably one of the most evangelistic person they've ever met. Meaning you really like to share the gospel with people.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
man, and I mean, even just hearing you talk about it, it's such a passion for you. And it is for every believer. It should be for every believer, right?
Yeah.
But you're like next level with this, right? So give us a little bit of like, what does it look like to engage lost people on a regular basis? Here in the South, I think we talked about this earlier, it's easy to run in circles of just all Christians.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to a grocery store or out to dinner someplace or the movies, whatever, and you're probably around someone who is very knowledgeable of church or, you know, whatever, but that's not quite the same up there. And so how do you engage lost people up there?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. In some regard, we're figuring that out as a church, but even for our core team in our church, we're really we find our deepest joy in getting out of our comfort zone and spending time with our neighbors and watching certain things click in their mind and heart. And so how we do it as a church is, again, we do these things called missional communities or community groups, and we have a pocket of people. And so for us, I'll kind of play this out for our own life. It's a mix between my apartment complex and the YMCA that's down the street. And we've changed a little bit of our mission strategy. So we'll host like monthly events for the community. And the city has asked us to help do that. So the city came knocking at our door in some sense and said, hey, we've seen some events you do. Can we partner together and host movie nights for families?
Oh, that's
or for the business community? When you do those things, would you advertise a couple of the food businesses that are in town? The city even asked us to host an Easter egg, help us host an Easter egg hunt. And so we actually got from Hickory Grove, we asked if we could have your Easter Connect, the Easter guide. There's one side for parents and one side for kids.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't know.
And so, whatever that is, it was great. Yeah. And so we connected with like 300 people in like just open air sharing the gospel. They're coming to our table, and like the mayor came from all of Boston, and like I got to share the gospel with him and pass him some information from our church, invited him to come. And I know he's incredibly busy, he wasn't able to come. But right now we have incredible favor with our community. And so
great, man.
That's one way we share it, is just saying, hey, what are the needs in the community? What does the city have a need for? And how can we meet this, not just tangibly, but what's our spiritual angle to connect with families with the gospel? Even we're doing that with the YMCA. We connected with them on New Year's Day. They were hosting an event. They were struggling with some volunteers, and so walked up to the director and said, hey, we'd love to help. We're a local church. He's like, yeah, we've heard about you guys. We've partnered before for some other things. And so he said, hey, man, would you sit on our parent council and help us figure out, like, families want to be developed spiritually. What does that look like for maybe even you to sit on that council and help some of our families think through how faith connects with raising kids? I'm like, bro, I don't know. I'm learning this. But he invited us to be a part of that. And I said, I think one way we can even help is talk about foster care and adoption, maybe help families that are pursuing this, or maybe single moms or single dads or grandparents or guardians that their child right now is in foster care, and maybe how we can help some of the home things so their child can come back to them, and things like that. And then this conversations about like, hey man, like, what do you believe at your church and whatever, and we're inviting them over to our house, we're inviting out to eat. And so in every month we're trying to host at least one event, and the goal is not just the event, it's to connect with the people at the event. And then our goal is twice a month to have a non-believer over to our house, and then twice additionally is to be out wherever they are. So if they're at the unfortunately, if they're at the bar, where I'm not drinking, but I'm sitting across with one of our friends and we're having a conversation about life, or if they want to go to a baseball game, that's where we go. If they're, if they want to go shopping, whatever, that's where I go with them. Because I think that's what Jesus did. He didn't just invite them into his life, but he went to where they are. And all of our church is doing this. And I think that's where we're at for 18 weeks. It's because our church is going to where people have not gone yet.
That's great. Yeah. What are some things that we can celebrate with you guys?
Yeah, man. This is kind of a prayer, too. So part of our church, we're reaching people that are very much not like me, not like Southern and not white. And so we've got a couple people come to our church, and they don't even speak English. And so in the back, you'll hear someone translating for them what I'm preaching, and I'm sending my note to them, so they're translating what I'm preaching right then and right there.
Like
which
to
is,
what language?
Spanish is one. We had Chinese, another one. And then I'm not exactly sure even what the third one was. They came 1 week, but the others like continued to come back. And so it's great for our church to have, but that's like, it's a celebration, but it's also like, man, like they're the Spanish, the family, they speak Spanish, they come to my community group. And so he's sharing with our group what he believes, and we're navigating the gospel together, but his wife is translating with us, and they bring all their 4 kids. And so our community group, we're stuffed in a Boston apartment with 31 people.
Oh,
and,
man.
They're with us, and a lot of our folks are not believers. And so we're unpacking the gospel, we're reading the Bible. And so we celebrate that. It's a wonderful joy, but it's a challenge when even the language is a barrier for us. I think I think we're celebrating one of our guys that's a non-believer is committed to be on the setup and teardown team every week. Comes to our church. He actually helped. He's like, I want to help you start this church. I'm not a believer. I'm not a Christian, but I want to help you start this church because I believe in what you're doing really does help people, and I've watched people change with the stuff that you guys believe. And so him and I meet weekly. I won't share his name because most likely he'll be listening to this podcast or friends that know him, but he's a dear friend of mine. I love him no matter what. But the big things that he's wrestling with is just, is this guy Jesus? It's hard for me to believe, he says, that I'm sinful enough or I'm wrong enough for God to have to come and die for me. So he banks his morality and his righteousness based on his deeds rather than what Christ has done for him. But man, every week he's helping us set up and tear down. He's coming to community group. He's asking questions. And there's a lot of guys just like him that are in our church. He's just more vocal about it. We've had one baptism since we've been there, which is great. So we're in a lot of these baptism conversations with our church. But we know one person has come to faith in Christ. We've baptized them since we've moved there. And then we're slowly moving towards all the other conversations because people are all over the place with their beliefs.
Yeah. Now, your baptism, is it like at a park someplace outside, kind of, or do you bring in like that metal?
We do.
Horse trough.
It is
a
horse trough, actually. So it's a metal tin horse trough. We fill it up with water. We have a hose runs out the back door, and we try to make it as warm as possible. But that's how we do baptism as a part of our church.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool for us because we're a small church and we get to we're not pressed for a lot of time, and so even part of our church we can have moments where people are reading out their testimony, and they invite we have a packet, and they're supposed to invite all their friends and family members, and they're sharing the gospel in their testimony. They get 3 to 5 minute slot, and then we record it, and we can send that to them, and they can put it on social media because we want them to tell their friends, because baptism, is a public declaration, and we want them to share with their friends because of it.
Cool. What are some goals you guys have as a church? Let's just take this year, 2020. Yeah. What are some goals you guys have?
Yeah, we've got to get membership. Yeah. We don't have membership.
It helps, yeah.
So we have our core values and our core faith statement as a church and how we operate. We have a plan for having lay elders a part of our church, but I'm the only pastor at this church. But if we want other pastors, I can't pay them. So in some sense, I have to raise them up from being a non-believer to being a Christian to being a Christian who knows the Bible, who can walk with God, and then shepherd people, and then be a pastor of our church. So we've got a long trajectory with what that looks like. But that's a big goal for us, is getting membership knocked down first. So we've created our documents. We're going to open up a class coming soon, which you guys, Hickory Grove, has been a big help with your Discover HG.
Yeah.
That's been a lot of our foundation for what we've done as a church. So membership is a big thing for us. And then for us to roll out, there's a 9-month track for a couple of our guys who could be deacons or could be pastors at our church. And so walking through that together will be something we really need prayer about, because I need more help doing what we do. And so other guys would be very, very helpful. And then we want to be able to multiply our community groups. So we have 9 right now, 7 that are part of our church and 2 that are on campus at college campuses, 1 at LaSalle and 1 at Boston College. And we want to multiply, and we want to go to at least 12 community groups by the end of this coming year. And then the next 3 years, man, we want to plant a church right in the neighborhood across in Austin. But that can't happen if we don't have membership, elders to lead them, community groups there. We're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, so how else can we be praying for you guys? Well, actually, before you share that, I think we have a team coming up sometime soon.
You do, yes. Yep, you have a college team coming up at the very end of February into March.
Good.
And there's a lot of things that we just need to get ready for, a lot of our summer initiatives that we do. Very cold. No one wants to come outside to an event right now. It's freezing cold, right? That's why I got this beard. Everyone's tired, cold. But they're getting us a lot of the groundwork ready and even helping us do some projects at Brighton High School with the staff, with the teachers, with the headmaster. And so they're helping us get all the groundwork ready and some relational things with the school before we hit the ground in the summer.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I guess there's probably more teams coming up throughout this year, next year. You guys will have a lot of teams coming up. Yeah. I think it'd be great for our people to come up and just spend some time with you and with your team. And just minister up in that area.
I love it, man. Great. And for us, man, it doesn't matter age, doesn't matter background, doesn't matter level of a strength in their walk with Jesus, man. It's a great development for anybody to come to Boston and help us.
That's awesome. Things we could pray for?
Yeah, man. I think finalizing for my family personally, finalizing the adoption of Kiana, and just wisdom with next steps towards foster care and adoption as our whole church endeavors this. It's scary when there's like, we barely have enough to kind of take care of ourselves, and then we're saying, God, we're going to step into faith and take care of others who aren't even, they're in a really rough situation right now. So be praying for our family as we begin to maybe take on another one, and then our church as we do that. And be praying for just kind of endurance and stamina. It's a great work. God is doing incredible things, but man, it's all hands on deck, all times. Like in the nights we're getting calls, I got to wake up early and go put out a fire somewhere. It's wonderful, but endurance and stamina and great strength in the Lord is what we really need. That's and then lastly, maybe praying for roughly 30 people that are in our church that are circling around that are not Christians yet. They know they're, or maybe 20 of them know that they're non-Christians. The others we're working on. But I'll be praying that God would make clear what the gospel is, their hearts would believe, and they would become a Christian. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Aaron, you're phenomenal.
Thanks, man.
Just in the time that I had to spend with you here, it's been awesome today, but also just in the years past, just being friends and being ministry partners and pastors here at the church together. You've always expressed this heart of wanting people to know the Lord, and man, it's awesome. I think you're doing a great job up there. We love you.
Thanks,
we love Emily. We love your family. And so we're proud of you, man.
Thanks so much,
and
man.
so it's been awesome for you to be here to share with our people. And every time you come back, we look forward to hearing something from you. Because, man, we're with you, man. Yeah. We're with you. So
well, we feel it because we could not have the church we have without your money, support, people,
that's awesome.
Prayers, everything. So,
so give more of it.
That's right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, well, man, thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
This was great. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.